WrestleMania 40 is exactly how to use nostalgia. This is 83 weeks. Eric Bischoff, Conrad Thompson. So we're going to talk about the main event exclusively from WrestleMania 40. Really the whole story of Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. And the backdrop will be Bischoff talking about this, but there's so much to talk about with the main event. There's so much to talk about with wrestling right now. And it was the most incredible story the WWE has ever told. I think no questions about it. Whether you think it's the best main event ever, or whether you think it's the best WrestleMania ever, there is no debate, as far as I'm concerned, that this storyline they told, whether you want to name it the Bloodline storyline or Cody finishing the story, or however you want to frame it, but for the last however many years, once the Bloodline began, all the way from Cody leaving, the Stardust, Cody leaving, everything he did outside, coming back, losing last year, winning the Rumble again, everything told. This is the best storyline, the best story the WWE has ever told. I think Bischoff is part of the greatest storyline that's ever been told in the history of wrestling, which was the Hulk Hogan turn, the creation of the NWO, which culminated in Sting chasing Hogan. That whole storyline, really the first 2 years of WCW, I think is the best story ever told. This, what happened with Roman, the Bloodline, and Cody, I think is right there. I think is number 2. Right there. And I could hear arguments that it might even be better.
Boy, this felt like the story that would never end, and it finally did in dramatic fashion. But night after, we saw Jimmy, and we saw Jay, and we saw Solo, and we saw Cena, and we even saw the freaking Undertaker. It was a special.
What was up with that? What was up with the Undertaker's got, like, all of a sudden he's got a hard on for Rock? I mean, that was weird.
I think it actually makes a lot of sense. I really do. I know, and I do agree. If it would have been Stone Cold instead of the Undertaker, I think it would have been one of those, like, I mean, it might have shifted tectonic plates. I mean, if you go back and watch the Undertaker's entrance and that when that gong hits, the pop, it was deafening. It was one of the best pops I've heard in a long time. If it would have been Austin, it might have been one of those things where, you know, the people in the building might not have been able to handle the deafening noise. But if you look at it from a wrestling standpoint, from a mark standpoint, however, no pun intended with Callaway, The Undertaker has been in his career kind of the guy who rights the wrongs of the locker room. He rights the wrongs of, people, not even wrestlers, but like real life people who have gotten out of line. We all heard about wrestling court, which Undertaker was the judge over, and all the unwritten rules in the locker room. So it does kind of make sense that he would come in and at this point decide we're going to go ahead and, we're going to right this wrong. The Rock's got out of control. The Rock has got out of line. He's doing too much. It's too much Mama Rhodes talk, too much cursing and whatever else. The Undertaker is kind of the judge, jury, and executioner of that. So in that sense, it does kind of make sense. It's also, it also is kind of cool. It's also a nostalgic thing. And honestly, maybe Austin, and I don't even know if Austin was a possibility. Maybe Austin would have been too much because Austin and Rock had too much history. If Austin shows up, Austin stuns The Rock, all of a sudden then it's like, well, there's got to be a blow-off. There's got to be Austin Rock again. There's got to be another match. There's got to be this. And maybe it would have been too convoluted, too complex. I think everyone's okay with this being a one-off thing. No one is expecting The Rock to, call out The Undertaker or for there to be a match with The Undertaker. I think if Austin was involved, there would have been that. So I'm okay with The Undertaker being involved here over Austin. And I mean, if you go back and watch it, I think the pop is all you need to know.
I felt like that was the Stone Cold spot that they didn't get to pull off.
Ah, that makes sense. Okay.
I mean, even a text came out the day of the show when Triple H was reporting it. He posted it at 3:16 and everybody online put their tinfoil hats on and the glass never broke. That's one prediction you and I got wrong. We both assumed, given the setting we saw in Chicago a few weeks ago, where the final boss was putting a beat down on Cody Rhodes in the rain. The way they framed up that tractor trailer, you and I felt for sure John Cena.
I wonder if something happened at the very end. I mean, that was just too perfect of a setup. It was too perfect of a setup.
I mean, that part I do agree with, where it's like if Austin would have been the guy, it would have been absolutely perfect, and it would have been absolutely insane. It might have just been too on the nose, and you also never know. Like maybe Austin just couldn't do it. Like maybe he just flat out said no, or couldn't do it, or they couldn't make the logistic works, or whatever. And again, like I said, maybe they felt like there was too much meat on the bone for Austin and Rock, and maybe they didn't want to revisit that. You know, maybe they didn't want all the extra stuff. They didn't want to revisit their matches at WrestleMania. They didn't want to do that. They didn't want to have the lingering issue of Austin and Rock. And I think we can all agree there isn't a lingering issue with The Undertaker, and his current character is the perfect character to do this. The one-off, just pop in, pop out, no storyline needed.
I don't have any inside information, but the rumor and innuendo was that Rock and Austin have had more than a professional rivalry for quite a while.
Yeah.
I mean, to the point where I was even told at WrestleMania 30, 10 years ago, if Rock wasn't coming out, or if Stone Cold wasn't coming out last, he wasn't coming out, sort of thing, when it was Hogan and Rock and Austin all together.
Austin has been very particular in his career with his career. He's been very particular about how he is seen, how his legacy is. We've always heard, why did Hogan face The Rock and not Austin? And Hogan and Austin couldn't meet in the middle. They're very similar. You know, they have a very unique perspective on how their character should be, Hogan and Austin. And I guess Austin is still like that. And maybe he was trying to put himself kind of ahead of this storyline, and someone probably said, look, I mean, we can't bend this storyline at all for Austin. We can't bend this storyline at all. I mean, I think Hogan would have made a lot of sense. I mean, you know, just like a character like that. There's a lot of people who could have been in this position, for sure. There's a lot of people who have history with The Rock, and if their music hit, it would have been just as powerful and all that. So that's another thing too with Austin, where if Austin comes down, all of a sudden Austin's got to leave. You know, it's a very different. The whole thing is different than Taker. Taker, lights go out, Taker comes in, Taker chokeslams, lights go out, everyone else is gone. Cool. If Austin comes down, you've got the walk, you've got the beer, you've got he's there, what's he doing? You've got multiple stunners, you've got The Rock still there, there's a lot of like other pieces there.
So we'll see. You know, listen, who knows what's real, who knows what's not. But I think Stone Cold was on his ranch playing with his cat when Cody Rhodes became the man. And good for him. Listen, it's rare that somebody, goes away and does their thing, and he had his fun a couple years ago, I guess, with Kevin Owens. And last night was all about Cody Rhodes. You see the baby faces, specifically Randy Orton and Sami Zayn, throwing him on their shoulders.
It's kind of crazy with Rhodes is that I've never seen anything like this. I mean, we all knew Cody was going to be, upon his return, we all knew he was going to be this big baby face. We all knew this was eventually going to happen. But the whole wrestling world has basically bent the knee to Cody Rhodes and the idea of Cody Rhodes' story and the idea of the Rhodes family. And he's gotten everything and more. He got, this story. He got Cena and Taker. He got all that. He got the family came in afterwards. He got the locker room. He got, Triple H and Bruce Pritchard out there. He got the Monday night, after WrestleMania, the Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania. He got the 45-minute no commercials at the very beginning. He got, everything we're seeing is like the whole wrestling world has bowed down to Cody Rhodes. He's a bigger baby face than I ever could have imagined. He may be, this is the highest peak of a babyface I can remember. Even if you look at, and it's going to sound like a lot of hyperbole, as a lot of my friends say, but we witnessed something that I haven't seen in my lifetime. Like, there's a lot of things that happened, whether it was the greatest main event in WrestleMania, the greatest storyline in wrestling history, the greatest storyline in WWE history, the greatest babyface moment ever, like all this stuff. And you're thinking back and you're like, well, it might be, because if you look back and look at like Drew McIntyre beating Brock Lesnar, that doesn't even look like this is on the same stratosphere. You look at John Cena beating JBL, or Eddie Guerrero beating Brock Lesnar, or any of those moments. You're like, that seems like a blip on the radar compared to this. This seems like it was it stopped Earth. Earth quit spinning so that this could happen. It just doesn't seem like DDP winning his first WCW title. It doesn't even seem like Sting beating Hogan. It seems like something else. I mean, it just seems like a totally different, a much bigger moment than just a wrestling match.
It felt very WrestleMania 10 like. They asked him at the press if it reminded him of when Dusty first won the world title back in 81. And he said maybe it was just a happy accident. Maybe it was just it was kismet. It was the cosmic timing of the way things shake out. Man, it's a big exhale for Cody Rhodes. He has been after this for so long. What a great story. And now he's back. What do you make of the news that he finally finished the story? As we're looking on YouTube and we see Mama Rhodes in the ring with Teal Margaret and Cody's father-in-law Otis, who just kicked out on cancer. I mean, it was a special night.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Look at Michelle. She's so happy.
Yes.
Cody's mom. That's so awesome.
I'll tell you how it was real, or it was intense, is Vince Russo put out a statement. And Russo is as pessimistic as it can get when it comes to the wrestling industry. Russo said it got him. Russo said he was emotional. He was basically moved to tears. And for a moment, he forgot to hate wrestling. Vince Russo is falling back in love with wrestling. I feel like everybody. I feel like wrestling is cool again is the kind of fun thing to say right now, but it's the true. I mean, this is. I saw people who don't even watch wrestling were talking about this match and this moment in the 24 hours, 48 hours after WrestleMania.
I woke up this morning and one of the first thoughts of my mind is, I wonder what's going through Cody's mind. I mean, trying to put myself in his shoes, to imagine what it's like to feel what Cody feels having finished the story and all the things that he overcame. And
I think if you would ask Cody when he first came back to the WWE, I think if you would have said, hey, how do you see this kind of going? He would have said, I'll win the Rumble, I'll beat Reigns at WrestleMania, and that'll be it. This has got to be beyond his wildest dreams. This has to be way beyond what he thought was going to be possible. He would have never thought, The Rock will come back and the final boss, and I'll lose at the first WrestleMania, and then I'll come back at the second WrestleMania, and then this will happen, and this will happen. The Undertaker, this is this is like a fever dream. I mean, this is an intersection of storytelling with the internet wrestling community, with Hollywood, with the markiest of mark finishes, all of that intersected to make a perfect ending, a perfect storyline. And that's another part of this, is that a lot of these great storylines I'm talking about, the NWO storyline, where it began with WCW's creation, and it began with Sting questioning, or the Sting and Hogan and Luger kind of questioning each other, and then the Outsiders came in, and then Hogan turns, he's the third man, and then that leads to the takeover, and it leads to Sting turning into the Crow, and then it turns into a year-long chase of Sting and Hogan, and then that culminates with the win at Starrcade, but that was marred in controversy, marred in horrible booking at the end, and a bad match at the end, and then Sting held the belt for a month, and then dropped the belt. Then we even see with Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30, where it was okay, it happened, it was cool, it peaked, and then after that, it kind of okay, whatever. It wasn't this. I mean, this had 2-year storyline. It had the Bloodline, which was way before that. But then the match was perfect. The match itself was absolutely perfect. There was the actual main event, the blow off. Very rarely does the blow off end up being the best part of the whole thing. No storyline has been finished better than this storyline.
Injury going back to last year, and leaving AEW, coming back to WWE. All the journey has been such a roller coaster.
Yeah,
for Cody over the last couple of years, and even leading right into WrestleMania, when there was some doubt, probably in Cody's mind as well as the rest of us, as to whether or not he was even going to get the chance
Yeah, true.
to end this story.
Good point. I think it's pretty well and accepted that this was not how it was supposed to go. It was going to be Cody was going to do what he had to do, and then there was going to be Rock versus Reigns. And they called an audible or whatever, and this is what we got. So even at the last second, the story was going to be much different. And then it goes from that to this, where it was like, all right, Cody, you're not going to do it. Okay, you'll do it. But then swinging the whole other way of, okay, you're going to finish your story, and it's going to be the most grandiose finish in the history of wrestling.
The way he had dreamt probably since he was a kid about ending this story. It was in doubt. It was in jeopardy. I mean, for us, maybe not internally, maybe internally, they always knew what they were going to do or what they wanted to do, just weren't quite sure how they were going to get there because all of the tumult and all the craziness that had been going on in WWE prior to Rock showing up, obviously. But I just wonder what it feels like. You know, I can only imagine what it felt like when he finally got his hand raised in front of that 75 or 77 or 72. How many thousands of people were there? I just wonder what that emotion felt like for him. What's going through his mind today?
It's got to be a little bit overwhelming, you know, when you have literally willed something into existence. I mean, he spoke this into existence. He called his shot, and now WWE's hotter than ever, and he's the top guy. I mean, in this era, they made Roman Reigns. And
I mean, you kind of have to, it's almost like a Conor McGregor situation where, you know, when Conor McGregor had both titles and he beats Eddie Alvarez and he's got both championships and he just beat Jose Aldo and he's the biggest star in the world and he willed it all into existence and he's looking around, he's fighting Floyd Mayweather. Like, it's almost like, I wonder if he said, like, what the hell is going on? Like, I never thought it'd be this. I thought I'd be the UFC champion. I said all that stuff, but I didn't think I'd be having $100 million boxing match against Floyd Mayweather. Like, what just happened? Like, this is beyond what I thought was going to happen. And then there probably is a moment where you're looking around like, is this real life? Cody probably thought that. Cody probably thought, yeah, I bet on myself when I left WWE. Yeah, I went to New Japan and I helped start AEW, and I did all that stuff, and I thought I could come back and be the man. I thought I could be world champion, but I didn't think I could do this. I didn't think wrestling would be hotter than ever, and I'd be the top dog, and The Rock would be like, I didn't think that would happen. So I think Cody probably is overwhelmed with what's happened. I mean, this has really snowballed into something. I'm a huge Cody Rhodes fan. Have been a huge Cody Rhodes fan. I never thought this could be it. I never thought he could reach these levels. I didn't think this storyline could reach this level. I never thought this was possible. I never thought we'd see a John Cena run, an Undertaker run, and like the way this whole thing panned out. I trusted the storytelling whenever The Rock got involved. I didn't think we'd see the best version of The Rock we've ever seen with this final boss version. I didn't think this would be how this played out.
And the story of Roman Reigns is going to be interesting with the benefit of hindsight, because you can't tell that story without looking at the first several years where he was seemingly pushed down our throats. Nobody was about it. He's on camera for 10 seconds with Paul Heyman, and the audience decides they feel differently about it. And they begin the Bloodline story that carried us on the biggest wave of success financially the company ever had.
Yeah, Conrad's right. And we talked about it earlier in this video. Like, you really have to go back. This story began with the Bloodline. This story has so many different chapters. This story began with the Roman Reigns turning into the head of the table and all those years of dominance. It begins with the Sami Zayn, the Sami Zayn trying to be part of the Bloodline, and then him, his falling out. And it has all the Brock Lesnar versus Reigns. I mean, we thought Lesnar was going to do it, their last man standing match. And then it has, then all of a sudden it has the Civil War with Jimmy and Jay, and it has all that part of it. Like, there's so many different parts of this storyline that had to happen before we even get to Cody Rhodes. The Bloodline is its own thing. The head of the table is its own thing. The 1,000 days of a championship is its own thing. And it's just crazy how that, very similar to how WCW's Genesis was the beginning of the Sting Hogan storyline, you've got to go through years and years of stories and matches and pay-per-views and feuds and, Solo and the Usos and, everybody. You have to go through all of that to even begin the Cody Rhodes part, to even begin that. And then you have to begin the Cody Rhodes part to then get to this part with The Rock and Cody Rhodes. And I mean, what Reigns has done in his career, Roman Reigns went from a John Cena clone to he's your top babyface. He went through all of that into one of the biggest, most successful heel champions in the history of the business. I mean, Roman Reigns, if he doesn't wrestle another match, you have to say he is one of the greatest wrestlers in WWE's history. His accomplishments and what he did for the business, he is up there as a top 5 guy ever for WWE. And that's if he never wrestles again. And most of that is on the back of this run. Most of that is on the back of the last 1,100 days.
And he became a real torchbearer for WWE in the process. Because I felt like the main event represented eras, Eric. You said, hey, what's up with The Undertaker having a hard on? They said right up front at the beginning of night 1, Triple H welcomed us to the show and said, welcome to a new era. And I felt like that main event showed us a few eras. The Undertaker's era from the early
Cena's
90s.
Era.
And the Rock Attitude era from the late 90s and early 2000s. And then, the entire John Cena era was represented with John Cena. And then the Roman era.
And then even Roman Reigns and the Shield, like they had an era there, all of that.
And now, seemingly, Cody is the guy. This was a stretch of the guys who are the guy. And that's the reason I feel like that was probably Stone Cold's spot.
Yeah, you're right.
And I get why, for whatever reason, for a variety of reasons, I'm sure, they didn't do anything with Hogan, but he did feel left out in the main event to me. Like if this...
I think Hogan and Austin are the two obvious ones that were left out. But those are also the two obvious ones where they are the most difficult to fit their puzzle pieces into the puzzle. They are the two people who throughout their entire history have said no thanks to being part of any puzzle. They want to be their own individual puzzle. They do not want to be fit into a slot with other people.
It really is sort of the generations of WWE and the different eras of wrestling in WWE. Hulk Hogan sitting in a box clapping would have been a cool visual for me. But, I get that Hulk doesn't travel a bunch these days, and it is what it is.
No, and it was disappointing that we didn't see Hulk. It would have been a great nod because I think people definitely look at Hulk. And, Hulk has overcome so much physically, mentally, emotionally, and in terms of public relations. And I think the public has finally, to a large degree, accepted the fact that Hulk made a mistake, said something horrible. It was a bad reflection on him, certainly, and the people around him. But
I think people, in that moment, in the last 20 minutes of that match or whatever, I think people would have been fine with an endless amount of entrance musics and run-ins. I think if we would have saw Hogan run in and Austin run in and whoever else throw, Sting repels from the rafters, like anyone in wrestling history, I think the fans were at an absolute fever point to where they would have been totally fine with every single, like Goldust runs in and then whatever, Hogan, like, sure, keep doing it. Never stop. Make it endless. I think that would have been fine. But I think the way it happened was perfect too.
I think people have kind of, I don't want to say they've forgiven, or excuse me, I don't want to say they've forgotten, but I do think to a large degree they have forgiven. And it would have been nice to see Hulk there. But you pointed it out, and I haven't talked to him. I've been running pretty hard myself. I haven't talked to too many people. My guess is the travel just would have got to him. He just isn't really capable of traveling a lot. Well, he's capable of it. He just doesn't want to do it. It's just too hard on him. But it would have been nice to see him there. But again, what a night for Cody, for Michelle, for Teal, the entire family. I'm so happy for him. I would have liked to see Dustin at ringside. I put the offer out there to Tony Khan. I said, Tony, if you give Dustin the jet, let him sit at ringside, let him be there for his brothers, the end of the journey, and to celebrate with the rest of the family. I said, Tony, if you let him go and you send the jet to get him there and back, I'll quit. I'll lay off you for the next month. I'll give you a month off.
I mean, a month off of Bischoff just ragging on AEW. I mean, you got to take it, Tony.
Won't point out anything. Won't talk about anything going on at AEW for an entire month. But clearly, Tony didn't take me up on the offer. Really disappointed.
Well, Dustin was there in a box sitting next to Ricky Starks and a bunch of QT Marshall and a bunch of Cody's pals. But I'm with you. It would have been nice to have seen him on camera. And listen, I know we're going to talk about AEW at the end, but it sort of caught me off guard. Dustin Rhodes is getting a title shot against the AEW World Champion against another Samoan with the real name Joe this Wednesday night.
Irony, right?
I mean, it is kind of like, not to throw shade at AEW, but whenever I see the AEW stuff after this, it's like, man, damn. It can't be, and come see Dustin Rhodes versus Samoa Joe. It's like, guys, we just saw something comparable to like Star Wars and the Avengers. Like, this is, WWE has just raised itself to the highest level since the Attitude Era. I mean, this is just like whenever Austin took over and his era begun. And you're looking at WCW like, this ain't good, guys. This ain't good. I would assume everyone else in the wrestling world is looking around and they watch WrestleMania 40 and they're like, damn, this ain't good. This ain't good, man.
What? Coincidence? Maybe. What? I think not.
I mean, listen, I didn't know what to say. I mean, I, for one, really loved that story and wanted to tell that story at Ric Flair's last match about Dusty and Cody having won the NWA World Championship, but it eluded Dustin. We didn't get a chance to do that. I do think he's one of the best wrestlers to never hold the world title. It would be a cool moment. I've thought that from the beginning, if he was one of the first or maybe the first AEW World Champion. But hey, maybe it could happen, but boy, I just did not see that coming.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, to put a bow on it, I really do believe that what we saw at the main event of WrestleMania was the greatest storyline WWE has ever done. And it's arguably the greatest storyline ever in wrestling history. I think it's 1 and 2 with the NWO, the creation, the genesis of the NWO culminating in Sting and Hogan at Starrcade. I think those are the two. Those are the big two. And you can say what you want about Hogan Warrior and whatever, even Daniel Bryan, the Yes Movement, all that stuff, or Austin and Vince McMahon, like their storyline. But we saw something that doesn't happen too often. We saw something that I think right now people are already saying it, but it'll be regarded as one of the best moments in wrestling history. Go down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. What did you think about the finish, the main event, the storyline, the bloodline, Cody Rhodes finishing the story, all of that? Was it the greatest storyline in wrestling history? Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.